of the Minamata Convention on Mercury Secretariat. I'd like to welcome you all to this information session on financial resources and mechanism. This is actually the first of 4 of what we like to call deep dive information sessions in preparation for the 5th Conference of the Parties of the Minamata Convention, which takes place in just a short while at the end of October of this year. So we would like to give you a little bit more information through these deep dive sessions on some of the topics that will be before the Conference of the Parties. The first of these is on financial resources and mechanism, of course, here today. And then we will have another one later today on national reporting, and then 2 more information sessions on September 14th. So today, today's session will be fairly brief and yet in-depth. And in order to do that, we'll give you a presentation and we'll take questions and answers towards the end. You may put questions in the chat at any time. And at the end, when we open the floor for questions and answers, you'll need to raise your hand and then you will receive a request to unmute from the host. And you would need to accept that request and then unmute yourself to speak. But again, we can take questions in the chat at any time. So let's get started. To give you a snapshot of where this topic lands on the tentative schedule of work for COP-5. It is planned to be taken up in the afternoon plenary of the first day of the COP on Monday, the 30th of October. And this topic takes up 3 separate components within financial resources and mechanism. The first is the Global Environment Facility. The second is the specific international program to support capacity building and technical assistance. And the third is the review of the financial mechanism. Now, in the next slide, just to situate you with the Article 13 requirements, Article 13 provides the mandate for the financial resources and mechanism topics, and it also defines the 2 parts of the financial mechanism. Paragraph 1 of Article 13 provides the very important requirement for each party to undertake to provide within its capabilities resources in respect of those national activities that are intended to implement the convention. So that is a very important requirement of parties, and we're pleased to see in national reporting that our parties are really tuning into that requirement. Other paragraphs of the article provide more detail about financial resources and mechanism. And again, it defines the financial mechanism in its 2 parts. The first, the Global Environment Facility, which is guided by the guidance to the GEF that is provided by the Conference of the Parties. And the second part is the Specific International Program, or SIP, which also has its hosting arrangements, its guidance, and its operational aspects set out, and that is set out in the Decision 1/6 taken by the first Conference of the Parties. So another important mandate from this article, which is the reason for this set of documents, is the mandate for the COP to undertake regular reviews of the entities comprising the financial mechanism. And paragraph 12 invites all parties within their capabilities to contribute to the mechanism. In the next slide, just to give you an overview of the documents prepared, again, it's in these 3 sets. The first set of documents is on the GEF. The second set of documents is on the SIP, and each of those are provided to each of our conferences of the parties. So at each COP, we have the update on the GEF and the report on the CIP. And at this Conference of the Parties, we have a decision document on the review of the financial mechanism. And we will provide more details on each of these sets to you in this briefing. So moving on to the Global Environment Facility, document 5/10 provides the Secretariat's update on the Global Environment Facility Trust Fund in its role as part of the financial mechanism, as just described and detailed in the slide on Article 13. So in this role, of course, again, the GEF operates under the guidance of the COP that was adopted at COP-1, as well as the MOU concluded between the Conference of the Parties and the GEF. And very importantly, in document 5/10 add 1, you will find the executive summary of the report of the GEF Council to the COP that describes the GEF programming on Mercury from July 2021 through June of 2022. The full report of the GEF Council to the COP is provided in an information document. But all three of these should be read in conjunction with one another. You may note that the time frame of the report of the GEF Council to the COP is somewhat shorter, more abbreviated than we normally have. And this is in part done in order to better synchronize the reporting timeframe with the GEF replenishment periods. And I'll get more into the GEF replenishment periods in a bit more detail in just a moment. But first, again, in the next slide, just to point you towards the full report of the GEF Council. It's really useful for our parties to not only read the executive summary of the GEF Council report to the COP, but the full report, which has a great deal of detailed information and project listings. The GEF Secretariat has very generously offered to translate the full report into French and Spanish. Our information documents for the COP are not normally translated into the UN languages, but the GEF Secretariat thought that this would be very useful for many of our parties to have the full report translated. So we greatly appreciate that, and that will be available soon. I should have mentioned earlier that we did have COP document briefings just last week, and those briefings are available on the Minamata Convention YouTube channel and also on our website. And those briefings detail all the COP document topics and the documents prepared. All our COP documents are due to be posted by the 18th of September, but we have many, many already posted for your use. So again, on this full report of the GEF Council, the GEF in the reporting period, which again was that fairly brief reporting period, they committed about $30 million for programming to support the implementation of the convention. And that is out of the total convention allocation in GEF 7, which was $206 million US. That full range of programming in GEF 7 funded enabling activities, which I'll talk more about in just a moment, funded full and medium-sized implementation projects, which were a combination of single party projects and multi-country projects, as well as overall programs, global programs that have multiple country child projects. So 2 examples of those programs are the Planet Gold program and the Jeff Islands program. So please do see the report, as well as our new dashboard of projects, which is linked here, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. So moving on to the next slide, we wanted to give you, again, a snapshot of the growth of Minamata Convention resources that have been allocated in each of the Jeff replenishment periods, and most recently in the Jeff 8 period. The Jeff 8 period is a 4-year period, which began just about a year ago, last July. So that was a very healthy increase of about 30% for the Minamata Convention, and a similar overall increase for the full chemicals and waste focal area. And that reflects a recognition on the part of donors that the chemical and waste financing needs are significant, and this includes the Mercury financing needs. So we would like to remind our viewers that it's very important for our parties to engage at the national level with the Jeff operational focal points and the Jeff political focal points, so that we can, you, can be sure that there is really full and effective use of this allocation, and that it really supports your needs for financing of the convention implementation. In the next slide, I'd like to give you a look back on the Jeff 8 architecture. So you can find on the Jeff website the full programming directions of the Jeff 8 replenishment period, but it does this combination of programming through the focal areas, which includes the chemicals and waste focal areas, but also biodiversity, climate change, land degradation, and international waters. And it also set forth 11 integrated programs. So already these integrated programs are receiving significant funding, and they were a big feature of the most recent Jeff Council meeting, which took place in June, and really had a historic programming of over $1.4 billion. So I'd like to move on to the next slide. This just gives you a glimpse of the sort of the timing, why the timing of this set of topics is important to COP-5. You can see right now, in the run-up to COP-5, we're in the midpoint of the initial duration of the CIP, and already soon the programming discussions and deliberations on the Jeff 9 replenishment period will begin. Those will begin early in 2025. So it's very important that this COP provide its input to these important discussions without waiting until COP-6. And again, the other reason why it's important for our focal points and stakeholders at the national level to engage with their Jeff focal points is to maximize the interlinkages with these other focal areas and integrated programs on biodiversity, climate change, land degradation, and also international waters. In my last couple of slides on the Jeff, I just want to show you the tremendous progress that's been made through the enabling activities funded by the Jeff. From the Jeff 5 period through the Jeff 7 period, the Jeff support enabled a total of 119 countries to work on their Minamata initial assessments, and 69 of those have, oops, no, my number's out of date. 73 of those are already published on the Minamata Convention website, and you can find the link there. Another useful link on MIAs is a dashboard that has been developed by UNEP as part of their work on these enabling activities and in cooperation with other partners. And the link for the Mercury inventory dashboard is also there. It's a very rich source of information coming out of the MIA reports. And similarly on ASGM NAPS, the Jeff has provided support from Jeff 5 through Jeff 7 for 48 NAP projects. And of these, we now have 30 that have been submitted to the Secretariat. And these can be found on our website. The link is there. And there is also developed by UNEP as part of their work on the global component of NAPS, a very useful interactive dashboard on NAPS that really draws forth a lot of the great information in the NAPS, including on baselines and targets, information on whether some of the worst practices that take place in ASGM with respect to mercury use are present in their countries, and a lot of other useful information. So this dashboard is updated whenever there is a new NAP submitted. We will have a deep dive information session on ASGM next Thursday, the 14th of September, if you want more information on NAPS. And just to close out this topic, as I mentioned earlier, we have a new Jeff projects database and dashboard. We worked very closely with the Jeff Secretariat, and we're very happy that we have been able now to make this dashboard go live. It allows you to search and sort through and provide and see the visual information about the Jeff projects, which are supported by the Minamata Convention allocation. So this provides a bit of an improvement from, or not improvement to the Jeff projects database, but it is a narrowing of the Jeff projects database so that you can more easily find out just what is being funded by the Minamata Convention allocation. I would note that those large dollar numbers there include projects that are multifocal area. So in other words, it reflects things that go beyond the Minamata Convention allocation, projects that were co-funded, for example, with the POPs allocation under the Stockholm Convention, or with other focal area allocations. But it's a very healthy number of projects, and a very good and encouraging look at the co-financing. So with that, I would like to turn the presentation over to my colleague Irene to talk about the specific international program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marian. And good day and good evening to all the participants today. My name is Irene Rizzo, and I'm the Junior Professional Officer at the Secretariat. And I will present on the second part of the financial mechanism, and that is the specific international program to support capacity building and technical assistance that we call the CIP, as Marian just said. And the relevant documents that the COP will consider are document 5/11 on the overall report on the CIP. Then we have document 5/11/AD1, which is on the governing board of the CIP. And there are two relevant information documents, INF 15 with the reports of the meetings of the governing board, and INF 16 on the midterm evaluation of the CIP. So let me start with document 5/11 on the overall report on the CIP, and this contains the Secretariat overall report on all the activities, but also the outcomes under the CIP since the last COP, COP-4, last year in March. And the document describes the support provided by the Secretariat to the CIP also regarding the administration of the specific trust fund, that is the trust fund for the SIP that was established in 2018, and then also the support that the Secretariat provided to the governing board of the SIP, donor reporting. Also, there is information about resource mobilization and the communication and outreach activities that we have been conducting. And also there is information, of course, on the implementation and monitoring assistance, technical support that we have provided to all the approved SIP projects, which are 24. The document also describes the work of the governing board of the SIP since COP-4, and it gives an overview of the status of the implementation of the 24 projects that were approved in the first, in the second, and in the third rounds of the SIP. And the document also contains information on the status of the specific trust fund, including all the contributions and pledges that we have received to the fund to date. And the last section of the report is about the midterm evaluation of the SIP, and it gives information on the work that the Secretariat has been doing to conduct the midterm evaluation, which was undertaken by an external consultant engaged by the Secretariat, but also it gives information on the scope of this work on the midterm evaluation and the conclusions and recommendations provided in the full report. With the next slide, I would like to describe a bit more the work of the governing board of the SIP since COP-4. And you may recall that the rules of procedure of the SIP establish a governing board that is composed of 10 members from parties to the convention. And each of the 5 UN regions nominate 2 members. And these members are nominated for 2 years by the regional groups, and their membership is confirmed by the COP. So this document 5/11/add1 contains 3 annexes. And the first annex is important and presents the reflections of the governing board on the midterm evaluation of the SIP. And what is important to highlight here is that the board was very pleased to note that the SIP was found to be addressing the needs of parties through the technical support and the capacity building that is needed by these parties to meet their obligations under the convention. And also the board was very pleased to note that the projects that have been funded to date, and those are 24 projects, have demonstrated to be effective and efficient. Annex 2 of this document contains the executive summary of the report on the midterm evaluation, and this was presented as provided by the external consultant. And Annex 3 provides reflections of the co-chairs of the governing board on the 4th round of applications to the SIP, which has not been launched yet. And this includes the reflections of the governing board include the fact that the contributions to date to the specific trust fund have not yet allowed the board to launch the 4th round of applications. And the board in the Annex 3 also calls for new additional contributions to enable the SIP to remain operational. There is also, at the bottom of the slide, you can see a bit more information about INF15. This is an information document that contains the report of the 7th meeting of the governing board that took place online in November 2022. And the information document also contains the link to our website, where you will be able to find the report of the 8th meeting of the governing board that took place last week on Wednesday. So the report is being finalized and will be posted on our website very soon. And before I move to the next slide, I would like to sincerely thank the co-chairs of the governing board during this intersessional period on behalf of the Secretariat. And they are Mr. Andrew Clark from the US, from the United States, and Miss Gina Griffith and Miss Tiffany Van Ravensway from Suriname. Next slide, please. Thank you. So with this slide, we would like to show you that the SIP is supporting developing country parties and parties with economies in transition in all regions, including a number of LDCs, the least developed countries, and of SIDS, the small island developing states. And you can see that in the first 3 rounds of applications to the CIP, we have had 9 projects approved in the Africa region, 7 in Asia Pacific, 3 in Eastern European states, and 5 in the Latin America and the Caribbean region. I also would like to mention here that the Secretariat is organizing a COP-5 online side event on the CIP during the week of online side events. And this will be on Wednesday, 11 of October from 2:45 to 3:45 Geneva time. Next slide, please. Okay, with this slide, I hope you can see the bar charts. But what we want to show here is that there is very high demand for SIP support. So you can see a snapshot of the projects approved and those are the projects in green versus the projects non-approved, and those are in red, in the first, second, and third rounds of applications to the SIP. And as you can see from the red bars, they give a good indication of the very significant demand for SIP support that we have. And I would like also to recall that during the third round, especially, the governing board was concerned that it was not able to approve more projects because there were more high quality applications than the funding that was available in the envelope for the third round. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've mentioned that we have had 3 rounds of the SIP so far, but of course, these would have not been possible without the voluntary contributions to the specific trust fund. And on behalf of the Secretariat, I would like to express our gratitude to the 10 donors that have so far supported the SIP. And these are Norway, the largest contributor, but also Switzerland, Sweden, Germany, the United States of America, Austria, the United Kingdom, France, the Netherlands, and Denmark. And also, the Secretariat would like to express gratitude to the government of Italy for the provision of a junior professional officer post in the Secretariat for 2 years from November 2021. Now 3 years. Next slide. Okay, speaking about contributions to the SIP, this bar chart would like to show that almost all the funding that we receive in contributions for the SIP goes directly to the parties for the implementation of their projects. So in the first round, we had 5 projects funded, and we had about $1,200,000 in contributions. And then in the second and third rounds of applications, we had well above 2 million, 2,400,000. And the governing board of the SIP was in the position to approve 10 projects in the second round and 9 projects in the third round. And for the fourth round, as you can see, unfortunately, the funding received to date is still about $1 million US dollars. And considering that the needs that have been expressed by our parties and also the quality of their applications have increased over these rounds of applications, the board has not yet considered this amount to be sufficient to launch a new round of applications. So at the moment, the fourth round of applications has not been launched yet. With the next slide. So same as Marian with the Jeff dashboard, I would like to show you here another dashboard that the Secretariat has developed on the SIP. And we have prepared this to make more information about the SIP accessible and also available on our website. And the governing board of the SIP that met last week on 30th of August has already deliberated on this dashboard, and it will be launched very soon on our website, and you will all be informed about this launch. Okay, so again, still speaking about the SIP, but moving on to a slightly different topic. I would like to speak a bit more about the midterm evaluation of the SIP. So you can see in this slide more information about the information document INF/16 that contains the full report on the midterm evaluation of the SIP. And this is presented again as received by the external consultant who carried out the evaluation. And as you may recall, the governing board of the SIP at its sixth meeting in August 2021 made provisions for a midterm evaluation of the SIP, which was designed to be completed in 2023, that, as Marian presented earlier, marks the midpoint of the initial period of the SIP, which is 10 years. And the evaluation was conducted between October last year, 2022, and May this year of 2023. And the evaluation took note of the report of the UNEP Executive Director on strengthening the SIP, which was presented in COP-5 document 13. And this work was also conducted in parallel to the second review of the financial mechanism that Marian will describe in just a moment, and the first three terminal evaluations of 3 SIP projects that were completed in 2021 and 2022. And just to mention that these 3 terminal evaluations are also available on the website. Very quickly, because I see we are running out of time, I would like to mention that the evaluation developed a mapping and analysis of the stakeholders involved in the SIP, and this is the stakeholder analysis, but also draft tier of change and the SIP results framework, which includes 1 outcome and 7 outputs and their indicators, and provided 11 conclusions and related recommendations for the continuous improvement of the program. And it's important what is at the bottom of this slide that summarizes the conclusions, some of the conclusions of the evaluation. For example, the evaluator concluded that the operations of the SIP to date have been conducted efficiently, that the support provided by the SIP is clearly contributing to strengthening the capacity of parties to meet their obligations under the convention, and that the resource mobilization is needed, particularly in consideration of the critical financial situation of the SIP that I described a bit earlier. Also, the evaluator suggested that the current staffing arrangements within the Secretariat might not be adequate to serve future rounds of the SIP properly. And this is because the demands of the program have increased, as well as the workload of the Secretariat. In the next slide, I only have a few more. We would like to give you a snapshot of the midterm evaluation work, and you can see here the 2 primary purposes of this work. And second bullet point just says that the evaluation assessed the SIP in relation to a number of criteria and provided also performance rating about these criteria that you can see in the table in this slide. And one important aspect that was also evaluated by the SIP about the SIP was the responsiveness to human rights and the gender equality. Next slide. Thank you. So without going into the details on this slide, we just want to show you the tier of change that the evaluator developed for the SIP. And last week, the governing board deliberated on this and on its use by the program. Next slide. And the same that I just said about the tier of change applies to the SIP results framework, which was also produced by the evaluator to frame the results achieved by the SIP. And we personally at the Secretariat find these tools to be very helpful for the management and monitoring of the SIP. And we believe that they reflect how well the SIP was designed to advance the implementation of the convention by our parties. And with that, I will turn to Marian again, who will present the next part of this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irene. Turning to the review of the financial mechanism, document 5/12 describes the work undertaken pursuant to a decision taken at COP-4 in decision 4/7. And the annex of that decision provided the terms of reference for the second review of the financial mechanism. That review covers August 2019 to July 2022. So in our meeting document for COP-5, we've provided a description of the work undertaken to provide for the second review of the financial mechanism by the COP at COP-5, including a submission process and arrangements for the report of the second review. And the report was undertaken by an external consultant. The document also provides steps towards a third review because, as mentioned earlier, the Article 13 calls for regular reviews of the financial mechanism. So this, we've put again in the bottom left-hand corner of this slide some considerations with respect to the timing vis-a-vis the SIP cycle. It's currently at its midpoint of its initial duration, and the GEF replenishment cycles for that sort of, for the COP to be able to think about the periodicity of these reviews. This is a decision document, so Annex 1 sets forth a draft decision, and Annex 2 provides the executive summary of the report done by the external consultant for the second review. And all the information called for by the TOR and submitted and provided is set forth in INF 17. In the next slide, just to talk a bit about what the review covers as per its TOR, you can see again the time period of it. You can see that it did require this set of information submissions and what it requires to cover. And three conclusions that came forth by the external consultant in conducting this review were that first, the financial mechanism has proven effective in the provision of adequate, predictable, and timely financial resources for supporting developing country parties and parties with economies in transition in implementing their obligations. But two, that the financial mechanism is in need of both a substantial increase in financial resources and more specific guidance to its entities for entrusted to its operationalization in order to face the current and the future deadlines and challenges of implementing the convention, and that a higher level of definition in terms of indicators used for monitoring and reporting could increase the efficiency of the financial mechanism. In the next slide, just to talk a little bit about some of its recommendations and how it was done. The consultant, there were actually not many submissions by parties for this review. And so the consultant decided to undertake a detailed survey, which reached all the national focal points as well as GEF operational focal points. And he conducted extensive interviews with our parties, stakeholders, relevant partners, the SIP governing board, donors, recipients, et cetera, et cetera. So it was quite thorough, and we were very pleased with the work. And I won't go into great detail about the recommendations set forth in the report. They're quite detailed, and you can find them in the executive summary of the meeting document or in the full report, both of which are available. But just to move on to what will be before the COP and what the document suggests as action for the COP. And again, because the report is quite detailed, we've really distilled some of these key recommendations and findings and conclusions into what could be actionable by the COP in the draft decision. So we we think the COP may wish to complete the second review of the financial mechanism at COP-5 based on this report and based on all the information submitted and provided. And the COP may wish to adopt a draft decision that would welcome the 8th replenishment of the JEF Trust Fund, but also note that there's a need to resolve to increase efforts to augment the funding in the SIP. And I would note here that the SIP governing board, as Irene noted, in its 7th meeting last November, deliberated rather extensively on this, the review of the financial mechanism, while it was also talking about the SIP midterm evaluation, both of which found that a replenishment of resources is really needed for the SIP. The COP may also wish to welcome the report of the second review on the basis of which the COP will have undertaken the review. May wish to communicate the results of the second review to the JEF Council and the SIP Governing Board. That is called for in the MOU between the COP and the JEF. The COP may wish to provide some more detailed input relative to programming directions and resource allocations for the JEF 9 replenishment period, as well as the implementation of JEF 8 vis-a-vis the important implementation deadlines and priorities that they are facing, and as well as the opportunities for integration across focal areas, including the biodiversity focal area. The COP may wish to request the Secretariat and the JEF Secretariat to exchange information, which we do to the best of our ability, and further coordinate on party obligation deadlines, needs expressed by the parties in their national reports, indicators, et cetera, et cetera. And the COP may wish to urge parties to work through their JEF operational focal points to make full use of the Minamata Convention allocation, and request the Secretariat to prepare an analysis of expected funding and related staffing needs of the SIP. And then finally, because a third review of the financial mechanism would need to take place at some point, we would want the COP to consider the periodicity of future reviews and perhaps request the Secretariat to draft terms of reference that they could then review at COP6. So we have now provided you with a great deal of information, and we are happy to take questions and answers. I know our time is running short, and I apologize for us not leaving sufficient time for a full 15-minute period of questions and answers. But Irene,
Yes.
why don't you go ahead and state some of the questions in the chat?
Yes.
And also, if anyone wants to raise their hand and take the floor, please do so.
Thanks, Marian. Okay, so we have a question from Adel Shafei Otman, and it thanks you, Marian, for the comprehensive presentation. And he says that he believes that the financial mechanism of the Minamata Convention is moving in ambitious steps towards the goal of the Mercury Convention, which is what we hope and expect for the rest of the chemicals and waste MEAs, as well as the instrument under negotiation. Thank you so much for your comment, Adele. And I note your question, which is about what is the linkage between the Minamata Convention financial mechanism with the integrated programs? Marian, you may want to take that.
I'd love to take that question. It's a really important question, and thank you for thinking that we're moving in the right direction, Adele. The full set of integrated programs within the JEF, it's 11 integrated programs, is quite new. And the rollout was right at the beginning of the JEF 8 replenishment period. So I think in terms of to what extent those will link with the Minamata Convention is somewhat of an open question right now and remains to be seen. But again, it's really important at the national level for our focal points and our stakeholders to engage so that the projects going forward from here out are really inclusive of Minamata Convention activities, which could be in the context of sustainable cities. They could be in the context of the work on Amazon, Congo, and other critical forest biomes, for example. We want all these integrated programs to recognize the importance of the Minamata Convention to in its role in limiting and preventing biodiversity loss and climate change impacts. So we encourage you to look more carefully at these integrated programs and also the possibility to integrate Minamata Convention actions into I guess I would call standard projects coming out of the other focal areas. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a few more comments. Thank you to Silvia Giardina from Italy for the comment. And we have one comment from Immaculate Javier, which goes as follows. We keep talking about financial assistance, but some of the local NGOs and local CSOs are struggling to implement programs on the ground. And it seems like financial assistance is not reaching local communities, especially mining communities. And she also says that in the ASGM sector, they have a Minister for Miners Forum and about 11 countries in this forum. And all miner associations have raised concern on addressing direct funding to conduct programs on the ground. It is not fully clear where Immaculate Javier is writing from, but maybe we can comment a little bit about the support provided by the financial mechanism, which is support provided to developing country parties and parties with economies in transition, and we work with the governments and not with the local NGOs, although all our project partners express already at the stage of their application submitted to the Secretariat, the partners from their countries with whom they will be working with. And we know from having reviewed many applications that our government partners are always very careful in crafting projects that are as involving as possible of their local NGOs and CSOs on the ground. I don't know if Marian wants to add anything else.
Yeah, I would like to add, because this is a really important point. The Minamata Convention really is designed to bring forth strong stakeholder input. And in particular, in its Article 7 on ASGM and its Annex C, all the NAPs should really, really be developed and implemented with strong and complete stakeholder input. And we've recently launched work to increase the engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities as well in the development and implementation of national action plans. And we would talk more about that at the 14th of September deep dive on ASGM. But more broadly, as Irene said, the SIP has a stakeholder engagement in its application criteria, and the GEF as well really looks to strong stakeholder engagement. And if that's not happening, we do want to hear about it, and so we appreciate your comments. And one final note that I would say is that the GEF also has a small grants program, and it has been a fairly active on Mercury, and it's also a good way for CSOs and local NGOs to be able to access funds from the GEF through the small grants program. So in a different way from these either enabling activities or medium and full-size projects. And the small grants program is managed by UNDP. So if there is interest, if you have any difficulty finding information on that, please reach out to us. And there is a plan to increase the allocation to the small grants program. So it really is a good source of support. So I hope that's helpful. I believe we're really out of time at this point. We've provided a whole bunch of links in the chat. And we are happy to also, if you reach out to us and have any trouble navigating our website, our dashboards, anything, please let us know so that you can have all the information that we have available to us as you move forward in supporting the work undertaken at COP-5 to make Mercury history. With that, I'd like to close and thank you all very much for your participation.